especially as it began these words. So the flow of the Maimah is that with the Deir Hashvi'i, and it's our tachlis, it's our purpose to bring the Shechina down here, the Ikar Shechina, even more than was revealed in Gan Eden. The true save of Kol Almin, as he explains. The Stalik, Ikor de Kuchabricho, Ikor de Kuchabricho means the glory of Hashem, the kavod of Hashem, and Istalik, which normally, conventionally, is understood as being elevated and removed. He means on the contrary. Here it means even more present. So why is it called Istalik? Because it's a level of godliness that's fundamentally removed from creation, beyond creation. Not just beyond like Sivav Kalalmin, beyond, but related to in an indirect way, but beyond the true, by mitis abligvo, the true infinite. And this is what we elicit through the Aveda of Yiskafia and Yishapche down here. And this is the connection, he said, to the death of Tzaddikim. The Gemara says in Bayit Cotton, and Rashi brings it, that the connection, the juxtaposition between the death of Miriam and Paraduma is to teach us that just like Paraduma, the Rebbe explains in Tanya that that the connection between the two is that the Paraduma has the power, since it's made outside Yerushalayim, outside the Beis Hamikdash, it has the power to transform even the realm of complete Klippa, and so too the passing of Tzaddikim. So now he continues as follows. And this is what it says in Zohar. The tzaddik passes away, he's found more in this world than before his passing. Again, the Rebbe had great difficulty saying these words. The Rebbe says here with a choking voice that even till the passing, he's saying, or the Stalkus, referring to the Friti Rebbe specifically, we had enough concealments in the stadium and screens and covering, the Kama Kushias and questions, Vinyonim, Biltim, Uvonim, and things that cannot be understood. It was referring to Jewish suffering throughout the Golus, and most probably specifically the Holocaust that just was only a few years before. In the Kozel, he speak. So in the words of the Maimah, the Rebbe says, "Met Gizen, it's not enough." They saw, heaven sees, Hashem saw it's not enough to affect the ultimate kavanah, in order to bring about the ultimate intent of the glory of Hashem revealed down here in the deepest way. So there has to be also the inyan of the passing of tzaddikim, referring to the two Maimonides, that it's even greater. Here too, the Rebbe could not say this. He said, that through all of this, the whole point is that there should be the revelation of Hashem down here. I want to read you in this context. That's what the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas V'Yaakov B'Kudei, Tavshin Yud. This is before Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph. This sikha was muge, edited, and it's published in the end of Pereg Chelik Beis of Lakut Sichas. But here in Teres Menachem, they bring the sikha with additions that were not in the edited sikha in Lakut Sichas. So I wanted to read to you just the translation. It is a small sikha, and the Rebbe speaks there what he speaks in the Maimon now. And this is what the Rebbe says. He said in the last Hemshech, the last series of Maimorim that the Rebbe wrote, referring to the Frierdiker Rebbe, he already forewarned literally and prepared us and put in place what is necessary for us to know, and moreover, not just in the theoretical sense that we should know, he did everything that's required for our generation going further. And the Rebbe said that, and everything is hinted there. The Rebbe said then that all the answer to all the questions that are asked, I look for, the Rebbe says, in that which these Maimorim talk about. Questions addressed to me, the Rebbe say. He looks for the answer in the Maimorim, in these Maimorim, this Hemshech, the Hemshech of the Yilula. So the Rebbe says as follows, continues, at the end of the Maimer, the second Maimer, which is what we're learning now, in the 11th chapter. So he talks about Netzach. So Midas HaNetzach, on the one hand, it's not part, it's described, Midas HaNetzach, Chod, Yesod, and Malchus, are not part of the body of the Nefesh, like Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Levar Gufa. I'm adding this. And nonetheless, he explains in the Maimer that Midas HaNetzach is rooted in the Etzem HaNefesh Mamash, deeper than all the other Koiches. That's why we see that in order to achieve victory, and he talks about what kind of victory, explains that the Rebbe explains, that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, the Rebbe elaborates in his Maimorim that there's two kinds of wars. There's a war, there's a tactical war. A war in order to achieve, to gain resources. So we go to war in order to conquer an enemy, but there's a cheshbon here. The cheshbon is the enemy has certain resources and so on, which we want to conquer for ourselves. This is the Avodah that explains in the Maimorim of elevating the sparks, engaging the world for the agenda of elevating the sparks. That's the to get sholol, to get booty. But then there's the true inyan milchama, which invokes, rather not the true milchama, but invokes the midas hanitzach and midas hanetzach, is when the state, the king, is threatened and opposed. It isn't a question of gaining resources. It's a question of the very existence of the kingdom, of the Melucha. And for that, the Rebbe explains, the Frierdiker Rebbe elaborates, that the king will be mavazves, the oitris, bizbuz b'oitris. He will squander the treasures that he collected from generations passed down from his forebearers. That the only time he'll show them would be at the simcha of his only child. But to use them and squander them would be unthinkable. But when the whole existence of the Melech and the Medina, which is one, is threatened, is opposed, then there is no cheshbonis, and these treasures are squandered. And moreover, let's continue in the Sikha here. The king himself stands in the throes of the battle, umashliv chayav mineged, and literally throws his life into the fray, into the battle, all in order to achieve the victory. And that's how deep Midas HaNitzochen is. It's absolutely everything or nothing. So the Rebbe continues that the Frierdiker Rebbe said this in his Maimer, then the end of the second Maimer, which we're doing now, in relation to our time, the final time before Geula, the conclusion of the elevating of all of the sparks. Like the Rebbe wrote the Frierdiker Rebbe in Akriya V'Akdusha, that now is the time before the Geula, and the Avodah now is in the way of Nitzochen and Kabbalah Soil. And this interesting thing that Rebbe added here about the Bizbuz or Iteres, that the treasures are squandered. So how does this happen? He says, it's given via the officers. They get the treasures, but the Kavanah Pnimis is that it goes to the Anshe Chayil, Diva Shisen, quoting Rebbe, the ones that are on the front line that shoot. It's through them the actual Nitzochen happens. So the Rebbe explains what this means. It's a quote from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. The Rebbe explains what's meant by the officers and the simple soldier. The officers are those who were B'keich Atzma, in addition to the keiches given by the Melech, which is the Rebbe. And then he gives them the matana as a gift, and that raises them even higher than their own avodah. He tells a story that Tzemach Tzedek, that well on the story that Rebbe wanted to give him a matana of very high levels in Libed HaTorah, and he didn't want to accept it. He said he wants to achieve it through his own effort. But later he regretted it and said that he should have accepted the gift, and then he would have, with his own effort, brought it even to a higher level. So that's he's explaining. That's the of the Sodim and the Pkidim. But the end is, bottom line, who is it for? It's for the soldier, the simple soldier on the front line. Rebbe also, this is in the footnotes, which wasn't in Bugad Dikasicha. Rebbe quoted more from the Maimer, the Eis we're learning now, Eis Yudalit, that talks about Shem Tzvokais, that it's one of the Rambam Paskin, it's one of the 7 names, holy names of Hashem, Shem Nimchakim, that once written can't be erased. Even though in Torah it doesn't mention it, it was revealed through the Nevi'im. But the Frierdiker explains how it is in Torah. It's explained in the Maimer. Anyway, let's go back to the point here. So, in order to affect the victory in the Milchama, so the treasures that are hidden and sealed, passed down from one generation. What are these things? Says the Rebbe. So these are all of the stories and the inyonim that the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed in this last period, which were sealed and hidden from generation, starting from the Baal Shem Tov and his teacher, Achi Ashiloni, the Baal Chaya Yechida. There was a whole arichas about Achi Ashiloni, why he was the teacher of the Baal Shem Tov Dafka, who he was. At any rate, so the Rebbe says, just going to get to the thrust of it, the point here, that the Rebbe revealing all of these things to the Frierdiker Rebbe is a real bizbuz, it's a real squandering. Why is it a squandering? Because no one pays attention and appreciates them as they should. And therefore it says, how do you say, bizbuz mamish? And all because of the Nitzochen. As a chassid, of course, we all realize that the same applies to our Rebbe. What the Rebbe revealed in the Kotei Sichos is a treasure that never revealed before, never articulated before, never shown before. The Etzem Mamish, the Yechid of Torah. Now back to the Sikh of the Rebbe. And since this all didn't help, the Rebbe was crying when he said this. So the Frierdiker Rebbe answered in the Maimer that the king himself stands that he didn't just involve himself in lofty matters, but dealt himself with everything, even the simplest matters. And he himself stood in the very throes of the Milchama. Had we merited, and here the Rebbe, had we merited, there says the Rebbe then at the Fabrengen, all of this would have been enough to achieve the victory. And the Rebbe would have led us already towards Mashiach. Friends, I'm just reading what it says. But the Rebbe himself said this really in the later years. But back to the Sikha, since we didn't devote ourselves to him as we should, then this is not enough. And like he says like he says in the Maimer, that Mashlich HaMelech Chayv Mineged, the king himself gives up his own life. So they write here that the Rebbe cried a lot, couldn't speak for a long time after saying these words. And then he said, since more than this, the Rebbe doesn't write in the Maimer is Torah. So Torah is ruled now that this is enough, no more. This is the final step. All we need to is Lazer Koyach Gvura L'Natzech B'Milchama, to girdle ourselves with the Koyachas to be received and to be victorious in the Milchama. Rebbe Tzfir L'Kas Mashiach, and Rebbe will lead us to Mashiach. So that's what the Rebbe is saying. This was said Shabbos Parshas Vayakov B'Kudei V'Orchem HaChedesh Erev Chedesh Nisan that year, and then the Rebbe is saying it in the Maimer. And then he continues, Oisches. And this is what's demanded from us. Now here it says, it's demanded from us that we should know as Megifinzich in Der Hashvi'i. When the Rebbe said the Maimer, he actually said the Loshen, nothing else is asked from us but to know that we are in the Der Hashvi'i. It's all seemingly implying that if we know this properly, connect to it, there's nothing else we have to know or should know or ought know. And that is the singular purpose that defines our entire being, that we are the Der Hashvi'i, we are all shluchim of the Rebbe, each one in his way, to bring the Shechina Lamata, to bring Mashiach. You're saying even stronger words than in the Maimer that's printed. He continues to call by this Hashvi'i hu Sheshvi L'Rishon. The whole mile of the seventh is, as he said before, the seventh of the first. That the conduct of the first, referring to Avraham, was that he didn't seek anything for himself. Not even Mesiras Nefesh, in the contrast to Rabbi Akiva. Because you know, his entire being, as the pasuk says about Avraham, he built a mizbech and he called there in the name of Hashem, God of the world. And he called there the name of God of the world. So likewise, the conduct of Avraham, which was, and they put this in the Yiddish, as the Rebbe said, the Rebbe says also crying. It was dort nicht gewusst von Göttlichkeit. He went to a place, not he went. Yeah, he went, and Rebbe is saying us to come into a place where they don't know of godliness, nicht gewusst von Yiddishkeit, and not to know from Yiddishkeit, und nicht gewusst viel von Allerbeis, and not to know even of the Allerbeis, und sein dich dort, und soll man sich ablegen in der Zeit, and to go to these places and put ourselves on the side, our own interest, when al tikra vayikra levayakra. The pasuk says that he called, but Chazal say don't read, and he called, he made others call. And the Rebbe said when he said the Maimer, he said, and even if someone comes along and he says, but the pasuk says vayikra, he called. What are we saying? You have to make another Jew called. Zokonim al tikra name. It's much stronger there. We tell him no. Don't read vayikra and he called, but vayakri, he made another Jew call. It's known. We have this. The word is written one way, but it's read another way. That's many times in Tanakh. So shtei hakriyos kayomos. They're both true. One doesn't replace the other. The Gambazeh also, in this case as well, the pasuk says, and he called. That remains. But now putting the two together, don't read he called, but he made another Jew call. So the pshat is not forget the simple meaning. It's only about the other person. And says, you're not a martyr. The end of the day, It's for you, for us, the shliach, the bavich. We have to know, he has to know, meaning every one of us. Neb was crying when he said the next words. As Eiber will imsal eingehen dem Vayikra, if you want that you should sincerely call and acknowledge Hashem, muss sein der Vayakri. You have to see that another Jew, darfst du sein, als jener soll nicht nur wissen, and not only the other Jews should know that there's a God, there is a Israel from there, he should, he says it later, yeah. He should call out. In other words, he should be moved. It seems that he should be moved to share this with the world, to inspire another person. But just till now, till you met him, till you came there, this Jew didn't know from anything. But that is the shlichus that you have to see, that this Yid, who didn't know from anything of Yiddishkeit, should not just know, but be so permeated with this. He cries out, Kel Olam, God of the world. Nit Kel Ha'olam, not God of the world, like I've explained, that Ramban explains. God of the world means there's a world, that's a reality. Nebish is the God of the world, he's a balabas. That's not enough. It's not enough that we bring our fellow Jew to recognize that there is a God. But much more than that, that he's the only reality. It's not that there is a God, and even to know that God governs and controls the world, but the world is distinct and separate. That's not enough. That's not the ultimate emes. The shlichus is to, they're saying, to spread the mayonis, chassidus, such that another Jew is permeated and lives with so much so that he calls out and that he aspires to. Keil olam, the ultimate truth, that the world is inseparable from Hashem, and all it is the consequence of his will. This is what he speaks about in Ois Yud Aleph, that he speaks in the Maimorim of Tavshin Chaf Aleph and Tavshin Mem Aleph, when he explains the Shem Tzvokos, and explains that there are three levels, the Shem Tzvokos, as it was by Moishe Rabbeinu, and then as it is by Mei Nevi'im, and then there's in between stage Yeshua, where Tzvokos is on its own. And essentially he explains, by Moishe Rabbeinu, it's Tzivas Hashem. It means the Shem Tzvokos, it refers to Yidden, but it means Yidden are connecting to Shem Tzvokos. What's Shem Tzvokos? The word Tzvokos means hosts, creation, Gashmi V'ruchni. The Gemara says the name Tzvokos is Oisu B'tzovadile. He is a sign, a wonder. He stands out amongst his hosts. So Tzivas Hashem means that the Tzvokos creation is bottled to Havaya. Havaya is the Shem Etzem, Shem HaMefurish, as explains in the Maimer. That's Yechudi Ilah. What's Yechudi Ilah? Yechudi Ilah is the starting point, is that there is God. God wants creation, there's creation. The creation is nothing other than the consequence of his will. That's Kel Olam. By the Nevi'im was already a lower level, the Yehuda Tata, and his Hashem Tzvokos, or other terms. So the idea of Havaya Tzvokos, that's indicating that Havaya is bottled to Tzvokos. The reality is that there is a world, we have to contend with it, that's Havaya Viskafia, but the world and the battle is real. That's the starting point that Rebbe says. The starting point is Iskafia. The starting point is we're working our way up. The Nevi'im, who are addressing our reality, where the starting point is me. That's what's real. And I acknowledge and surrender that's an Eibush. That's Iskafia. Iskafia acknowledges that the world that is intrinsically valid, but we understand and surrender to the creator, to the source. But the point of origin is consciousness, is the self. That's Havaya Tzvokos. That's Iskafia, that's Yehuda Tata. Then the Kavanah is, he says, the Mamutz of Shem Tzvokos. What's the Mamutz of Shem Tzvokos? He says the Mamutz of Shem Tzvokos is that even though he brings from Kumta Seitz HaChaim from the Rebbe Rashab, that who says there that even though our reality is at best bitla yesh, we are a yesh, and the avodah is to surrender the yesh. I'm not going to escape the fact that my whole experience, my whole entertainment of everything starts with me. Nonetheless, even that which is Yichud Tato, the lower unity, Baruch Shem and Vod, Malchus and La'ilam and Vod. Nonetheless, we have to know the emes. We have to know the truth. That's when we say Shema Yisrael. That even the Avodah of Yichud Tato, you have to know at least that the emes is Yichud Yilah, the emes is Kel Olam. The emes is that everything is completely bottled Metzias. God's the only reality. And again, creation, its whole definition is that He wants it to exist. That's Ke'aloila. But this can't be arrived immediately. First is the Milchama, 2 levels of Milchama. As we mentioned earlier, first is the first level of Milchama, which is Biranitzutz, and that's Yiskafia. Yitzhar is real, the world is real, and it's a big struggle. But Hashem helps us. We have the Bizbus Ha'itzeres, as we described over here, and then we proceed from this Avodah of struggling with the world to the intermediate, to knowing the emes, and then experiencing the emes, Yishapcha, Yichudi Ilah, Kel Olam, which is the ultimate destination, which we are in the process of morphing into now as we stand on the threshold of Geula. As the Rebbe says here, that's the whole tachlis of the shlichus, is to go. I mean, it's just an incredible thing. You're going to a place where he doesn't know of Yiddishkeit and Aleph Beis, and it's not just it's not just you make him a from a Yid. Keeps to the mitzvahs, he knows there's an Eibishter. No, the tachlis is to reveal the depth of Chassidus, to live it and to reveal it. Kel Olam, Yichudi Ilah. The Eibishter, the Eibishter is the only reality. Tzivus Hashem, as it was with Moishe Rabbeinu, the ultimate truth. And this is the final Milchama. The final Milchama for which not only Bizbaz Ha'itzeres, but the Melech is Mashlich Chayav Mineged. And as we quoted before from the Fabrengen of Shabbos Parsha Yakub, so this is it. And now we just have to girdle ourselves and do what has to be done and bring about the completion of the mission entrusted to us. And I'm going to repeat again, like the Rebbe said in the Maimer. The Lashon was the only thing demanded from us is a Mizal. We have to know. We have to know the emes and internalize it, and the rest will follow. With all of the help and assistance that we receive from the Eitzres and from the Melech himself. All right, my friends, Be'ez Hashem will continue tomorrow night. That's the last Eis. The last Eis Tes, and then we'll see further. We'll give a summary of the whole Maimer. Maybe we'll elaborate a little bit also on to explain a little more the Rebbe's whole beer in the Iker Shechina and the various shilas that he asked that one could ask, and the Rebbe's beer on what is meant by Iker Shechina. Maybe we'll readdress that again, because that's the scholar part of the Maimer that perhaps is intellectually more difficult. The most difficult thing is the Avodah, and that's the most difficult, and that's what's in the Gear, to be the soldier on the front line. But we also have to understand what the Rebbe is saying, so we will maybe address that in our summary as we give a summary and overview of the Maimer in the days which follow. Thank you all for joining. And we should actually wish each other not to meet tomorrow night, but the mission is complete, and the Rebbe will speak and take it the rest of the way. Seid gesund alle.